Hey folks, this is Caleb Foshi with the Dust Bowl Catholic, and this is my Catholic dollar. All right, for this week, I know that labor sounds very scary, but really what it comes down to is labor encompasses really a huge way of life. Labor involves work and toil, but it also involves dignity and self-respect as well. So I'm going to hit you with a whole lot of Bible, a whole lot of catechism, and a good bit of papal encyclical on this one. And we're going to hit it hard at the very beginning. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10b. If anyone will not work, let him not eat. This is pretty blatant. Now, we are called to charity, as we've covered before, but we are not called to be enablers. You are supposed to work just like everybody else, and everybody else is supposed to work. Now, it's okay to help each other out, but you are not to be a burden on somebody else. Let's go over to the catechism. Human work proceeds directly from persons created in the image of God and called to prolong the work of creation by subduing the earth, both with and for one another. Hence, work is a duty. And to not work simply because you choose not to is a sin. To become a reliant on other people's generosity in order to make ends meet because you refuse to go get a job is a sin. It's pretty plain right here in these last couple things we've looked at. So let's look at another catechism. Paragraph 2428. In work, the person exercises and fulfills in part the potential inscribed in his nature. Everyone should be able to draw from work the means of providing for his life and that of his family, and of serving the human community. So again, not only is work a duty, but when expounded upon, work is a part of our nature as humans. And look at something key in both of those references. It says that it is to be used to benefit and help not only yourself, but others. So hearkening back to stewardship, when we are given gifts from God to include jobs and skills and abilities, we are to make the best of them and benefit others in the best way we can. Let's switch over to an encyclical. This one. Through work, man must earn his daily bread and contribute to elevating unceasingly the cultural and moral level of the society within which he lives in community with those who belong to the same family. Again, we hear this, the idea of stewardship in connection with work and labor. We are to use our jobs, our skills and abilities to make the most of what God has given us and to help and benefit others as well. Here's another reference. Work is one of the characteristics that distinguish man from the rest of creatures. Only man is capable of work. Thus, work bears a particular mark of man and humanity. So this just compounds upon the thought that work is both a duty and in our nature as man. It is what makes us different from the animals. Animals subsist on instinct and necessity. We as people, we also have to make a subsistence at least through our work and labor, but we also can provide a sense of dignity and pride and potentially joy from the work and labor that we do. Let's go for another one. In spite of all its toil, work is a good thing. It is not only good in the sense that it is useful, it is also good as being something worthy that corresponds to man's dignity and increases it. Again, we're talking about work and toil, this time using the word toil, which, for the most part makes you think of the sweat of your brow and working very hard. But in the broad sense of the term, it doesn't mean that you have to be plowing the ground or, doing something extremely physical. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing something extremely physical. Our Lord was a carpenter for 30 years before he started his ministry. So he was no stranger to physical labor. But our work and our labor, it does provide dignity. It's just like we've all known, or we've been in this position where folks have been out of work for a while and can't find a job. It's degrading. It can send you into depression and just destroy you from an emotional and into a certain point physical standpoint. Work is important. So let's move over back to the Bible now, okay? 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8, if anyone does not provide for his own family, he has disowned the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Boom, that one's pretty rough too, just like the first one from 1 Thessalonians that we talked about. Pretty blatant. If you don't provide for your family, you have disowned the faith, and worse than an unbeliever. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're working your fingers to the bone and you still can't make ends meet, that this applies to you. This applies to somebody who refuses to get a job because it might be beneath him, or because it doesn't pay as much as the job that they lost. It doesn't matter if you lost a $100,000 job. At least in Oklahoma, $100,000 jobs are hard to come by. If you can't find another $100,000 job immediately, that doesn't mean that you're supposed to sit there and wait for that job to come along. It means that you're supposed to go get 1, 2, 3 jobs of lower paying wages, even if it means, scrubbing toilets or pumping porta potties or something like that. It doesn't matter. The point is, you've got to provide for your family. You've got to make sure you live up to what you signed on for when you got married, and on top of that, it preserves your dignity, because while it may be painful and terrible while you're going through it, you can look back on that time and say, you know what, that was terrible, but I did what I had to do to take care of my family. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 4, a slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. So again, here we're looking at being idle, either by choice or not by choice. Don't be idle, okay? Get yourself to work. Get back to work. It doesn't matter if you're delivering pizzas. Go do it. It will preserve your dignity. Back in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 11, he who tills his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits has no sense. All right, so this one we're switching gears a little bit. This assumes that yes, you are working, you are at labor and toil, but the first part of that verse says something to the effect of working hard and diligently. The second part of that verse talks about worthless pursuits. And by worthless pursuits in today's society, I would venture to say that means get rich quick schemes or easy money type things. There's no worth in that. And besides that, they don't work. They don't work out. You've got to work hard. You've got to show up every day. You've got to put your pants on, put your big muck boots on, and get out there and get the work done. Now, it could be flying a desk, or it could be digging a trench, but you've got to go to work. Again, in Proverbs, let's look at this one. Chapter 14, verse 23, in all toil there is profit, but mere talk leads only to want. So again, we're talking about getting out there, getting the job done, doing your work, no matter how hard or how menial it may be, getting the work done. Just talking about it, sitting around, is not going to get the job done. And it causes you to fall further into that depression and to make that cocoon around you that much stronger to try to protect yourself from what you're feeling. You've got to have your dignity preserved and your self-respect. To finish up, we're going to go to the New Testament, the book of Colossians. Chapter 3, verse 23, whatever your task, work heartily, as serving the Lord and not men. So again, if you're doing something that you'd rather not do, if you're doing something that is, potentially embarrassing to you, don't let the man get you down. Because you don't work for the man, you work for God. You are taking the gifts and the abilities, and that gift being that job. As terrible as you may think it is, that job is a gift. And you're making it better and using it to benefit others, especially your wife and children. Let's look at our homework for this week. Calling upon saints and going to prayer. This week, I would encourage you to look at Saint Joseph the Worker. We're still communicating. This is huge. You and your wife have to be on the same page. If you've come to the point where you think that maybe you need another job, your wife needs to know that. And 3, you're still going to discern. Do you need another job to make those ends meet? First of all, you've got to make your ends meet. Secondly, you need to pay down that debt. Now, we're going to get to how to pay off that debt in future weeks, but discern on whether you need more income to make that happen. I'm Caleb Foshi with the Dust Bowl Catholics My Catholic Dollar. Please remember to subscribe, comment, and share with your friends. And we'll see you next week. Until then, be not afraid.